Welcome to Change Conversations. My name is Joy, and today I am joined by an amazing guest who I have here all the way from Australia. Before we dive in, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Change Conversations for those who are new to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Change Conversations is all about lifting change professionals, change practitioners, promoting them, finding out a little bit more about their change practice. We know that it varies across different jurisdictions, across different industries, different sectors. So it's really an opportunity to promote the work of change managers, build our knowledge and awareness around change management, and really how do people deal with challenges, and just celebrating our successes as well. So it's a really exciting podcast, and we're really excited to have Taylor with us today. I'm gonna introduce her. But just say hey, Taylor.
Hello.
Hello. So thank you for joining us today, Taylor. Taylor is an up and coming in the field of change management. She currently is serving as the Australian Management of Change Practice Lead at CODIS. Is that correct? CODIS, yeah. At the same time as being a program change manager at a global mining company. And so her career has had a really interesting trajectory, and it is marked by a remarkable blend of innovation and adaptability. So her journey began in a science outreach, would you believe, and environmental science to be precise, leading her to the tech sector. Then she advanced into IT help desk roles and IT management. And, Taylor has a real zeal for change management, and she combines like her varied background of innovation, tech-driven strategies in her change management practice. She's just such a passionate individual, beyond change management and professional pursuits. She enjoys sharing her knowledge and connecting with like-minded individuals, fostering a community of continuous improvement and collaboration. That's music to my ears. And, I suppose her noteworthy contributions have recently been acknowledged in Australia in the 2023 Western Australian Women in Technology Rising Star Award. Congratulations. And that's in delivery, project management and IT support. So well done. Oh, very well done. That's amazing, Taylor. And how did it feel to receive that award?
Honestly, my husband was with me and the head of HR was next to me as well. And they described me as a deer in the headlights. It took me about 15 seconds to actually process my name was up on the screen. And proceeding, getting an award, you're thrown straight into a media room, and they're like, how do you feel? And I just sat there like, so I think I'm still processing it. It's been about 4 months now, but it was incredible.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so clearly you didn't have the heads up that you'd won.
That would be nice. I would have prepped a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, congratulations again. So we're going to just ask you some questions today. We want to find out a little bit more about you, about your change management practice, and glean all your experience and some of your insights and top tips. So let's dive into it. So obviously you've had that change in career, as I read out from your background. You were in science, you've been in IT, and so you had to take a personal, go on a personal change journey yourself, right? How did that feel, and how did you come about going about that change journey through your career?
Oh, that's a really good starting question. So yeah, as you said, I have been almost everywhere in the scheme of disciplines. I went to Curtin University in West Australia, for anybody who is a WA person listening. And when you move from the country, where my family was, to the big smoke, you have to find a job fast. So that's a change in itself. I remember being a 17-year-old out on my own, trying to persuade people to get me a job. And I was lucky enough that the university had a program that they took on students and gave them opportunities. Wow. And I happened to get two. I was very lucky back then. And one was the IT help desk type role. So I had my foot in the check door. And then the other one was the science outreach role, which is back then I didn't realize, like, communications and engagement with a variety of different stakeholders, all different ages, backgrounds. So I had those two roles at the same time as studying environmental science, because I thought I wanted to be the next Jane Goodall. Well, needless to say, during my university degree, I did scrape through. I never figured out why back then I struggled with it. And I think it was really that lack of creativity. But I got that creativity from my other two jobs I was juggling at the same time. So once I finished my uni degree and went and became an environmental scientist for a while at a place called Kings Park and Botanic Gardens in Perth. Um, I killed a few thousand plants in a research study and figured out maybe being in a lab and looking at soil and seeds was not for me.
Not for you.
No. And that was really hard to accept because like you spent like 5 years studying, done research papers, like you're trying to fit the mold of like the researcher and the scientist, and I was not that. And then all of a sudden you turn around to like your family and friends and you're like, actually, I'm gonna ditch this. I'm gonna go back to like the other jobs I was juggling still at the same time because research then didn't pay very well. Yeah, left that. I still use the excuse it was because people didn't talk to me in the lab and I talked a little bit too much. Um, but yeah, going back to IT help desk and moving up with the ranks from team lead to manager and building my own function at the university because I went back to Curtin was really inspiring. When I say that, I mean, I look back and I kind of see that progress, that all the individual changes I made, I changed as a person. I went from this student who had no idea what she wanted to do to doing absolutely everything at once to scoping herself back down into a single discipline, which ended up being in the tech field. But I'm not a techie person. I'm not like, I do not let me anywhere near code. I'll probably break it. Although I can help you fix a computer, it's usually have you tried turning it off and on again, or Control Alt Delete to get your screen to extend if you're on a Windows device.
That works.
So it was interesting coming back to that domain where you're expected to have all this tech knowledge. And I owned it, I didn't, but what I was good at was the people side. So the people management at the time, but also finding this this opportunity in ultimately the area I was working in that no one was delivering training. And this was around the time that like Spark boards, which is owned by Cisco, first started coming out, and we're moving from those overhead projectors to these interactive whiteboards. And then Microsoft Teams is coming out on the scene and being a competitor, and Zoom and this, and no one knew how to keep up. No one knew how to use it, and the university is screaming for help. So that's how I kind of landed into the whole training world. Training, you need communication, you need engagement, you need to get the people in the room to actually learn something instead of them expecting you to hold their hand and be like, oh, you can do it for me, sweetie. I had that said a few times to me. But with enough convincing and empowerment, they got there.
Amazing.
So yeah, fast forward about 10 years there, and it was time for me to leave my little team I'd built up there and go out into industry and join Acodus, where I got put out at the global mining account that I'm currently still at. And that itself was a major shock to the system.
Yeah, and that's so interesting, Taylor, that you mentioned earlier when you were describing the transition between, you know, science and moving into tech. And you mentioned a word that we use when we're looking at the change curve, which is, you know, that acceptance. You came to a point of acceptance, you mentioned, just coming to realization that this is not for me, you know, long term, and, you know, it's run its course. And that can be really tough. And I think sometimes we underestimate, you know, as that we are human beings and we are, you know, we have emotions, and that we are also going through change whilst we're delivering change. And, you know, just describing your career, your you know, changes in your career, you know, you've described some real leaps and you know, serious, you know, transitions in those different disciplines and industries. And so when you came to make that next leap, you know, into your current sphere of, you know, mining, like a contract, how did you make that even larger transition, you know, just in yourself, you know, going through that change yourself, but also being required to now, you know, deliver change and lead others?
Yeah, if you speak to my mentor, It took a lot of convincing to get me to leave the nest.
Mm.
I kept coming back to my job back then. It got to a point where I was there for my team. And so that security and wanting to care for my team, like I couldn't cut the umbilical cord, if you want to use that phrase, to leave. So what my mentor actually helped me do back then, she's like, well, why don't you go and sit your ProSci course? Just kind of see that what you're doing now in your role, and I was the manager of the IT change and learning team, but majority of my staff members focus more on the marketing, videos, and training space.
Right.
So to me, I was like, I have no experience being a change manager. I'm a people manager. Like I know what they do. She's like, well, go do your ProSci. And I did, and I sat in, and it was a little light bulb moment, like, hey, actually a lot of what I do right now and previously have done, all those opportunities I've had, actually set me up to be a really good change manager.
Right.
So that was kind of like the first little bolster. And the second little bolster, I wouldn't say it's little because they were a massive influence on me, was my my mentor and a few of my peers that I worked with around me, who just kept giving me that reassurance that, hey, like this is scary and that's okay for it to be scary. You're allowed to have those hyperventilative attacks when you get home, but you can do it. And one day I got them to make the call and I decided to go and interview for some new jobs. So that was kind of like getting over that little bump to actually get outside and try something new.
Right.
But once I was out, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So once I was out, that was just another big change curve. It was, you're out here. I used to work in a team, and all of a sudden I'm the only change manager in this team in this massive mining organization. They're looking at me and I'm freaking out because I'm not too sure if I'm actually right in what I'm saying here. Are they going to like my approaches? And honestly, how I got through that was a few little pep talks in the quiet room, I'll be honest, and a few phone calls to my mentor going, oh my gosh, what I've gotten into. But it was putting faith and trust in myself and researching, trying things, being open if they failed, being really excited if they worked. And actually, and I know some people, there is like a forum out there at the moment that's like, oh, don't be your authentic self in the workplace, and there is reasons for and reasons against. But I found personally that just being me here, I didn't have to, or I act professional obviously, but it wasn't that I had to put this mask on and I'm the change manager, I act this certain way. It was, I'm the change manager and my name's Tay.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And when we spoke before, Taylor, one thing that really struck me was around your attitude towards experimentation and failing forward, and just let's try it, and that can do attitude is so refreshing. And so in keeping with, I think, other change professionals take that sort of approach. But I love what you said about personality, because earlier when you were describing your time at the science in science sphere, you mentioned that you wanted to chat and you're a people person, and that just wasn't working for the quiet labs. And now doing ProSci and working with people in change management, being able to express yourself, it's really interesting. The interplay between personality and change management. But what are you currently working on, and how are you sort of using your skills in your current role?
So what I am currently working on, so as you mentioned in the little intro, I've got a few hats, but I'll talk about what I'm doing out at the account at the moment as an actual change manager. I came back from Christmas this year, and first 10 meters. I actually felt like I was only 10 meters into the office, but 10 minutes into the office, the manager / acting vice president calls me in for a meeting. She's like, oh, Tay, you did such a great job helping out on a different initiative last year that I actually wasn't meant to be helping, but I could see they needed the help. So I was like, hey, here's some direction, here's some coaching. You did so well that they now recognize in the internal audit review that they actually need a change manager there full time. Wow. So we'd like you to take on the program change lead role for the Australian region transition to the new enterprise risk framework, matrix, and introduction of critical controls, which is very governance, risk, and compliance centric. I am not a GRC person. I'm a technology person. So I've decided, well, you're a service provider, you don't really get a choice, but like I've joined this little initiative and this team to help them roll out this new ways of working to the entire of the Australian region workforce. And risk is at the heart of everything everyone does. Critical controls is this brand new thing. Nobody knows what it is. But what's more challenging is that it's going to be line-led. So it's not so much that the direct team I'm working with are the ones like delivering the change. It's the people that they are working with in those different business units that are going to be leading it. So it's actually the first time that I'm personally going to be leading a program change level initiative such as that. And it's, oh gosh, week 3 or 4 into 2024, and the amount that I've learned is ridiculous.
Wow.
So that's one thing I'm doing. And then on the other side of the coin, in the same organization, I am working with a GRC product team. So the tech side of things, where I've come from, my safety bubble, to help them with uplifting a whole pile of modules this year. So it's very much like a juggling act at the moment. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because this is where that uncomfortable zone, like way between those two islands, is where I grow the most.
Wow. I love that. The uncomfortable zone. And, you know, a lot of us shy away from that because we don't want to we talk about stretch opportunities, you know, go for something that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, you'll grow. But a lot of people are afraid of that because particularly in an environment where change management isn't as well established as other disciplines, project management for one example, you know, it can feel a bit like, you know, you're putting yourself out there and actually, you know, what if I'm not doing it right? And like you mentioned, that learning curve that you're on, as well as the people that you're training and teaching and coaching and taking through change. So it is a really, really interesting balance. And like, how have you found it in your 3 weeks or so in?
Be brutally honest, because no point in not being honest, and a lot of change aficionados who are listening would also agree. I am panicking on the inside. I feel like I haven't got hold of anything, but that is where my inner critic needs to be a little bit more quiet. Still recognize that, it's a little bit chaotic right now. It's kind of like a ball of twine that I'm trying to like unravel and get some like path moving forward, although change is not linear, at least something to start with. But at the same time, that chaos and being in that like uncertainty zone, discomfort zone, is where, as I said, the most learning happens.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. You know what? I just think, Taylor, that people that are in the change management practitioners, you know, they have to do what a lot of people are afraid to do. They have to be comfortable with uncertainty, which is the very thing that most people don't like about change. But it's uncertain. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know how it's going to be going through it. And you don't know what it's going to be even to start. You don't know what starting feels like until you actually start. And when you're going through, you're kind of like, I'm not sure. Is this going to be okay? Is this new laptop going to be okay? Or is this new role going to be okay? Like you're just uncertain. But change managers have to like hone all that emotion, channel it positively towards helping other people go through that very uncertainty that you may also be facing. And I think community is really important. And I know we've chatted about, you know, community. You mentioned your mentor has sort of guided and supported you through. How has the change community or the community that you currently have at work been influential, helpful, or otherwise, you know, in this journey for you, in your career and in the current work that you're doing?
So I'm a part of 2 change communities, to use that definition. One at the account that I'm working at, and one that I run myself at Ocotis. So the one that I work with here at the mining company, they only really restood up a change forum, change community practice early last year. And that's because this organization has gone through a merger. And I think I counted at one point, they had like over 300 strategic level changes happening last year. Ridiculous. So when an example of when that community comes in handy there is you have so many changes happening to the same organization. You have all these different, in this case, the majority of us are service providers, so all contractors who have come in from all these different organizations who are trying to do the same thing and help the same people sometimes adopt, move, shift, change to the new ways of working post-merger. And there was a lot of process changes. There was so many system integrations. And of course, there was people changes. So having that forum, we could all come together and have that overarching view of, all right, where's all these changes happening? Who's talking to who's engaging in what? Where's priority laid? Do we need to shift some back? So that was one useful part of having that community in the environment that I'm working.
Yeah.
The second part was the sharing of the lessons learned, particularly when it's at this organization, what worked well, what didn't. There was one big change that happened last year with the HR system that everybody was just sitting there with their popcorn, eating it away and watching, seeing how it went. And we got them to do a lot of talks and updates, informing both us as change advocates and also informing us of like what went well, what didn't. Make sure that we have the messaging. I'm a big believer of your one team, one voice. We talk about communications and telling people about it. So let's make sure that all those who are in roles such as change managers also know what's happening in the organization, whether like we're directly involved or impacted or not. At least if someone asks us, we can go, hey, yeah, I'm not an expert on that, but I can point you to the right direction.
Right.
So that was really the forum here at this company, use was, that overarching view of what on earth is going on, that feedback and learning ability, what's worked, what hasn't, and also having that like those key messages across everybody, so we could support each other as a change community, whether it is our change to own or not.
And I just think that's so important, just having, whether it's from an official forum of change professionals or unofficial, or even just in the wider community. I think drawing that support is really helpful as you go through leading change, as you go through, your work and practice, because you really do need to keep learning, and need to keep growing. And you do that not just from on the job learning, but also from others who've had similar experiences. Like I've been on a number of similar projects, but others would have been on similar projects. Okay, what are their lessons learned? What are mine? And let's share and exchange and that information to be able to grow and adapt together. And I think that also helps to sort of, as we learn and grow, it helps to sort of champion change and make it more attractive to not just other change practices, but to also to those that receive, on the receiving end of change. And I think you, when we chatted, mentioned the Star Wars presentation. I don't know if you remember.
All right, so it's kind of like tying us to my other role and hat that I wear. So I spoke about the practice here as a mining company, but the practice back at Codis. So this is right before I became the practice lead, actually, and it kind of sparked that inner flame in me, like, oh, I want to take on this practice lead position, because what I've just done in this situation, though small, had a huge impact, and I was shocked by it. So this was still very early on in my consulting days, only just recently left the safe confines of the university. And the company started this series called the Insights series. And the purpose of the Insights series was to connect individuals, both internal individuals in the company and also external consultants who are out in the field, but still part of the company, obviously, and pretty much share insights from what's going on out in what we're doing. And they were looking for someone, and I think it was a third round. And it just happened that it landed on one of the Star Wars days, and that was Revenge of the Fifth, or Revenge of the Sith. So I just could not help myself but theme my entire presentations, puns included, to Star Wars. So I did my due diligence and researched Star Wars. I rewatched the Star Wars films. Don't ask me in what order, I can't remember. And there's all this contention around it. And I was like, cool. So like this, let's focus in on this movie. And that's when like Luke Skywalker, not Luke Skywalker, oh my gosh, Anakin kind of is going through his own internal change and battle, and he knows he is powerful, but people underestimate it. And on that quote, I think it is like, you underestimate my power. There's this meme of him saying it. And I'm like, this is perfect because everybody underestimates the power of change managers. So I started off my presentation with, you may be surprised, but change managers are very much like Anakin. If you don't know who Anakin is, that's Darth Vader. And everyone just looked at me like, well, you're telling me that you're evil? And I'm like, no, not in that way. But you do underestimate our power. And I drew comparisons between Anakin and change managers and educated the audience. And a lot of this audience were high-level executives of the organization, BAs, PMs, devs, AWS, Microsoft, a like plethora of roles. Not many change people in there, funny enough. And I use that as the base of, here, let me educate you about what change management actually is in a relatable way using pop culture references that is applicable because of the date we're doing this on.
Right.
And it just stuck. I even had a gentleman called James Bromberger. He's the head of our AWS stuff that we do. He disappeared off camera and came back with a Jedi cloak on. He was so into it. He was like, I am here with you. So just seeing that level of engagement, and the chat was going off with memes and GIFs and people being like, it's the first time I've actually fully understood change management because you use Star Wars.
So it was all online?
It was all online.
Wow. And you see the level of engagement. That's phenomenal.
It was incredible. I then continued on to use that purpose as, this is what change managers actually do. We're not just comms, to demonstrate something that I had done. And from memory, what I'd done was I had come into the organization I'm in now. And as I mentioned, there was an astronomical amount of change happening. And I was on this product. The product's called Works. And the saying was, Works doesn't work. And I had this history for about 8 years before I came in. But everyone kept telling me that they didn't like it, but no one actually told me why. And I'm telling them this story. And I'm like, so what's the first thing I do? I go and ask why. I went and talked to people, had water cooler conversations. I sent out your stereotypical survey, added a net promoter score in there to try and gauge exactly where it was at. And I got back some pretty confronting information, but at least I understood why. Why did this product have a negative 64 NPS score? And a lot of it came back to people were saying things that the support teams had already delivered, they'd already engaged, they'd already communicated, but obviously it wasn't getting its reach. And these techies didn't know that. They're just here to dev, push it, to prod, make sure it goes live, great and dandy. So I decided, all right, cool, I'm going to build a dashboard, use Power BI, so a Microsoft tool. And I was like, I'm going to test how your traditional mechanisms of communication, so your email, then Yammer. Yammer is a Microsoft tool. People aren't familiar with it. Fantastic. SharePoint. So how many clicks SharePoint's got through. And we have a few other channels in this organization. And I managed to measure every single engagement metric that you got from that, the clicks, who actually read it, the read time, all that type of stuff. So these are traditional methods, and that was all written. And then I was like, right, now I'm going to add in a little bit of Tayflare. And Tayflare included applicable memes, GIFs, micro videos with pop culture references, and branding. I branded the product. Gave it a more appealing brand. I used colors that, if you do the research, like psychological wise, brought like calm but reassurance too, if you use those colors in marketing, as I'm sure you would get with your marketing background. And I use those types of forums instead, and like that type of engagement approach. And the engagement just skyrocketed. It was like, hang on, so you're telling me in an organization where everyone's walking around in suits and ties that you love memes, pop culture references, and pretty colored things? Fantastic.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? But I think that's because people have gotten used to sending out the and they still have their purpose. They're still necessary. Your stock standard email of information, but no one's got time to read it these days, day and age. Our attention span has reduced significantly since invention of technology. We're all on screens, we're all scrolling. There's some statistic out there, and I was thinking to myself last night, I've got to remember that statistic because I swear it's probably going to come up. It doesn't matter, but it's like
Post it after.
I'll post it in the notes, yeah. It's like the time it takes for someone to consume a visual versus the time it takes for someone to actually read something is like a fifth of the amount of time.
Right.
People are time poor. We've got to get it through to them. We've got to make it engaging. We've got to make it fun where you can, where it's applicable to do so. But yeah, that's how I got across one, what change managers are beyond comms. We can do data analytics and dashboarding too sometimes. And two,
we can.
yeah, we can. And that kind of fed into the demonstrating my diverse skill set in ultimately building this tool and trying these different ways of, it was ultimately me pulling on my old research days. Be like, try this, test it, get a baseline. All right, try this, read baseline and what's the improvements. And I found that little presentation just, it hit so many people like at home, and they're like, we need to learn more about change. And that's where the change practice hat kind of came on, and I put my expression of interest in, and a few months later I was the practice lead, which again is a big change and quite daunting.
Wow, yeah. And I just love what you said, Taylor, about gamification almost. That is a method of making it fun, but making it interesting, and the level of the result was, speaks for itself really, as to how effective that is. And I had a manager who was like, from my first week, from the jump, she was really very much into gifs and emojis and all sorts of things, and I just thought, where am I? From a legal background, that wasn't something I was accustomed to in a professional setting, but I really loved it and embraced it, and now it's something that I adopted and embedded in my practice, and see that just that level of engagement to lighten things where, like you said, appropriate, is so apt. And I think I was working on, because you mentioned innovation earlier and we spoke about it in your bio as well, but working on an automation project that I was sort of super proud of, that I got the opportunity to do just that, bring in the creativity, bring in a bit of experimentation. Still quite serious, people automatically think you're automating something, you're taking me out of a job, and we're dealing with finance teams, we're dealing with really complex matters, but actually just by bringing a little bit of a few gifts and a few, just making it really interesting, engaging, I came up with a little bot.
Yes.
But, we named the bot, we had a bit of a name the bot competition, name the bot. Yeah, exactly. Just making it a little bit more fun, lightened it, made it more endearing, a bit more, people are a bit more receptive, then they're a bit more open. Then you
not
can
as scary.
Sorry?
It wasn't as scary.
No,
you
exactly.
It's more inviting.
Right, exactly. And that was so successful, and it's something I'm, super proud of having done, because, that organization, whilst they're a little bit less sort of formal in their culture, certain teams still have that formality, particularly finance teams and others that are similar to, in demographic, and in terms of the work that they do, aren't going to take to it as much, but have really high attendance at lunch and learns, workshops and things. People were engaged, and it was really effective. So I think, being innovative, in the change space is really important. And I think when we chatted, you mentioned some other innovative work that you've done around AI and different things.
Yep.
Is there anything you wanted to share around that?
Oh, it was a very similar approach to what you just said with the bot. I was using, oh gosh, now it's skipped my brain. It's what happens when you're doing a podcast at the end of your working day. But anyway, yeah, I developed a bot, and I called him the Risky Business Bot, after the movie Risky Business, with Tom Cruise, who does his classic slide across the room scene, his jocks and his socks and the dark sunnies, and the white t-shirt. Yeah, must watch it. It is iconic. And ultimately that bot, although it didn't get deployed just because of some licensing things with this organization, what I did do is I took it back to a coders and I tested it there and I was really proud. But anyway, this bot, instead of like when you go live, particularly products, you have a hypercare period.
Yeah.
And our team is made up of two ultimately support people on the ground, the rest are overseas. And at the same time as it going live in hypercare, they may be fixing things in the background, let alone actually providing that support. Also, people don't like going, it's not that they don't like, it's more their time poor. So they don't have the time or the capacity to actually go and search SharePoint to find that article, or ServiceNow knowledge management system to find something. They want it where they are now. Like, so what I did,
Precisely.
I built this channel, attached the bot to it in my testing because I didn't get to go live, unfortunately, and pretended that I was an end user that just had this system deployed to me and I was having an issue. I pre-populated in the back end, taught the bot a few little things, and it could bring the knowledge to them then and there. If we didn't have it, it would escalate it. If it was an issue that I identified a certain criticality in the matrix that we developed, it's escalated it straight through to a support person. So it just removed that duplication of work that a lot of people and change managers jump onto the hypercare support train as well. We're in there in the trenches with the delivery teams. Instead of us copying and pasting the same thing over and over and over again, even if you do make a central database of info, they're probably not going to go there. But if they know
they read it all the time.
No, but if they know they're going to go to a space that they're going to get an instant, like instant feedback, interaction, whether it be with the bot or the person, they're more likely to go there. Then just hit complain, oh, I wasn't given it, I can't find it anywhere, and the big alarm bells go off. Because we all go through that. I've been through changes where I couldn't find something. I was an end user and I got really annoyed that it isn't easy to find, but it was just because I didn't read that email that told me where to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's familiar to us all, isn't it? Around just we put all this work into the communication, which is primarily what we're branded as doing, even though that's a very small component of the change management function and role. Teeny weeny. But we put so much effort into the communication, tailoring it, wordsmithing it down to the Oxford comma or whatever you all have in Australia. You know, you're really just making it so it's refined, perfect messaging, perfect tone of voice. Most people don't even read those FAQs you developed. They're not going to read that article because who really has time to sift through FAQs? Really, nowadays, as you said, we're so time poor. People want things in real time. They want it now. They want it to be accurate, precise, and relevant to them and their situation and their problem. And they want the solution there. And that's like microwave generation. We're like even beyond the microwave generation. We're like whatever we have now, iPads generation. You know,
I think we're beyond that, but yeah.
Like literally. So, you know, we've got AI, we've got all sorts of things now. So I think it's really important that as change practitioners, we start to explore these other avenues and don't stick to the traditional methods of, oh, your standard FAQ document or, oh, knowledge article or, oh, service desk information. Like you really need to like use the technology to your advantage because people are just not going to read it and then they're going to be none the wiser and your change won't be adopted or embed because people are like, oh, this is too hard to find the answer. I'll just stick to what I was doing before.
But that's because, and like, yes, change managers or change advocates, agents, whatever the role you are called, because there's so many role names and that's a whole other separate discussion we can go into. If you want to break down, go research Lena Ross. She has a breakdown on her blog forum, absolutely fantastic. But the role of the change manager has changed and it will continue to change. And that's one of my priorities taking on the ACODIS practice lead position for management of change is to assess where our current consultants are now and also the business, like what is their change maturity. And then go, cool, what are their skill sets now? What do they need now and future? And upskilling them, doing lunches and learns, sharing. I write thought leadership articles every now and again when I get a spare few moments where I kind of push the boundary a little bit about, hey, like, why don't we try this as well? And it might not be traditional change management skills. It actually might encompass more agile BA type skills or
Mhm.
marketing type skills. And it's
Mm.
kind of trying to show people that, hey, like we need to evolve and adapt and be diverse because change is the only constant. So thus our role is also changing constantly. And
Mm.
we need to be open to moving with it. We're also going to get stuck. And that's going to be a difficult situation to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. But fundamentally agree with everything you've just said. We do need to evolve. We need to change in the way we practice, in the way we champion change, in the way we present ourselves and lead change. So I think, that's absolutely the case. And it's the case for, a lot of roles as other roles as well. We
Mm,
are sort of keen in this generation around learning and development, and we all really need to be have that growth mindset. So it's really important that we do that as well, where it comes to change, not just helping others change, but helping ourselves change and
yeah.
embrace some of these new ways of working, not just bog standard. Oh, I learned this in my APMG course, I'm going to just do
Oh,
this
yeah. Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
standard way. Let me just do what the book, do it by the book. Actually, you know, use the book, but also, use other things too, other techniques. And marketing is huge. I've been reading and researching around the marketing influences around change management and how they intersect. And I think it's just
Mm-hmm.
game changer. It's really powerful. I know neuroscience is also really big right now. But
Yeah, psychological safety.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it's been really interesting chatting to you and hearing a bit more about your work and your interesting transitions and journeys as a change practitioner and professional and the amazing things you've done. Congratulations again on your award. And I know you're going to do absolutely fantastic and amazing things in this new role and look forward to catching up with you again on another podcast soon. Do you have any closing remarks, Taylor, on, you know,
Ooh.
championing change or how to get your message out there, how to get buy-in or adoption or anything that you think will be really helpful for others to hear now, like what would be your sort of last remarks?
Just because we kind of talked about championing for change and that can kind of dive down so many different avenues. Um, but we're kind of talking about like, yeah, getting change management out there and getting understanding about change management out there. And I think it's, yeah, being very push the boundaries in your approach, where you can obviously be curious, do your investigation around who you need to win over. Like if it's a project manager, they're probably going to be easier to win over. But if it's actually like an end user who has only ever had really poor experiences with change, for whatever reason, and you can see they're having a bit of a negative response to the change that you're going to carry out with or facilitate with the people that you're with. Go and engage with them, go and talk to them. Don't just send a comms and go, hey, this is happening. Because again, as we said, no one's probably gonna read it. People have feelings, people will respond the way they do. And the best thing that we can do is go and be an ear for them where it is feasible, talk to them, get their history, listen. Because it's funny, when people are actually felt like they're being listened to and heard, in my experience, may not be everyone's experience, you start to turn that person from a immovable, so does not want to move, to a movable person, and they are more likely to come on to that change journey earlier and go up that adoption curve, if you want to refer to that one, a lot easier than just sending them a comms and just go, shh, be quiet, like you're making noise. Like engage, talk to them, walk the floors. Don't just sit behind your computer and send a comment, my work is done. There are so many amazing change managers I know out there now who are massive advocates for going and directly engaging where you can, being considerate of international regions and COVID and all that type of stuff.
Yeah,
But yeah, go engage, be you, be authentic, be honest. And yeah, you will see what power that brings by just being authentically you.
amazing. Thank you. I love that. Be powerful, embrace the change, and go out there. And I would absolutely echo what you just said. I'm a huge advocate of, whilst it's great to work online and there's great technology and tools, and I absolutely love working remotely as well. But that
Mm.
direct contact, it makes the huge difference. I remember, someone I worked with saying, "Oh, I just see you walking talking to people. I'm like, yes. Do you know
Yeah.
the results I get? When I leave their desk, they will go and check for my email in their mailbox and find out
Yes.
what it's all about. They will remember my name, and next time I speak to them, that's it's so effective. Where some people just don't get it. They just don't know how effective, talking to people as people is. So on that,
Absolutely.
yeah. Did you want to add anything?
Oh, no, just thank you for starting a forum like this. Again, back to like the whole like championing change efforts. Having a forum like this where you get to interview people from all different walks of life and backgrounds and experience levels. As you know, I'm a newcomer. And even just having the opportunity to come on this and talk about whatever we've talked about for the last 45 minutes has been a fantastic experience for me. Normally, I'm on the other side of the podcast interviewing people. So it's actually the first time I've sat in the podcast D seat. So thank you, Joy, for starting these conversations. And I'd be really keen to come back on and catch up with you in the future.
Absolutely. We'll be sending you an invite. Well, thank you so much, Taylor, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon over there. And yeah, see you next time. Take
See
care.
you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.